Hi everyone, it's Lauren, and in this video I'm going to be talking you through some of the books that I have on my to be read or TBR pile. I normally do one of these videos every 3 months or so, where I think about what books I want to read in the coming weeks and months, and sometimes I get through my list and sometimes I don't. As always, all of the books that I mention will be linked in the description box below if you find any of them particularly interesting. Now, I have some books here which I did have on my list 3 months ago and I have not read. And that's 4 books, so I'm going to keep them on the TBR list. They're going to roll over. I did fairly well in the last quarter, I suppose, is what it was. Considering I was planning a wedding, I did read, a good amount of books, but I didn't get through everything. You may remember that I've been doing a bit of a project where I'm trying to read all of the books which are on my shelves or as part of sets in my house, because I have this habit of finding a nice little pretty set of books and putting them up in my house and going, oh, aren't they lovely, and then not reading them. So the books that I have left are kind of from those sets, unfortunately. That's The Beast Within by Emile Zola, which is one of the Penguin Pocket classics. I was going through my Virginia Woolf books and I have not yet read To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. I've been going through my Persephone books and the one from 3 months ago with Mariana by Monica Dickens, and I haven't read that either. And the last book from my previous list was A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, which is just on a kind of dark spined area shelf in my house. So these 4 still remain valid. I'm still going to try and get to these where I can. I think looking at it, it looks like I've been picking some easy and short reads in the last few months and not anything that's a little bit more meaty. So looking forward to getting into those now that I have a bit more time. And now the books I will be adding into the list after those 4. I guess I should prioritise those 4, but these books look exciting too. So from my Penguin Modern Classics kind of turquoisey area, I have picked A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. I read Howard's End quite a few years ago now, and I thought it was fine, but I don't think I really got it. I didn't really connect with it emotionally, and since then I've heard that lots of people seem to really love it. I have also read On Beauty by Zadie Smith, which is a retelling of it, and I went to see a play which is on in London at the moment called The Inheritance, which is amazing, by the way, if you're in London and you want to go and see it, which is a new play, and it's about the AIDS crisis in I was going to say New York, but I guess in the US more widely, kind of during the 80s and 90s, but it is a retelling of Howard's End at the same time, and it was just amazing and it blew my mind. And then I kind of felt a bit bad that I didn't really enjoy Howard's End when I actually read it. So I do have Howard's End. I would like to read it again. But I also have A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. So I picked it up in a second-hand bookshop, mostly because of the edition, which I think is beautiful, and because I wanted to read this book and I wanted to read more E.M. Forster, less about the actual plot itself, but it is about the English abroad, which I think is going to be rather funny. Then from my white-spined books, I picked up this collection of poetry by Sophie Collins, Who is Mary Sue? And unfortunately, I don't know very much about this because my friend Jen Campbell lent me this book and kind of just said, oh, try this, I think you'd like it. So I don't really know what to expect, but I do fancy reading some poetry because I haven't in a while. And it says inside, in the language of fan fiction, a Mary Sue is an idealised and implausibly flawless character, a female archetype that can infuriate audiences for its perceived narcissism. So it sounds like she's going to be playing around with that archetype. And it also says down here, it will resonate with anyone concerned with identity, shame, gender, trauma, composition and culture, and probably about how women are viewed in the world. I mean, it does sound right up my street, doesn't it? And lastly, from the collections around my house, I've selected from my black-spined books 1984 by George Orwell. I don't think you can really see the title on here because it's indented, but I got these absolutely beautiful copies of 1984 and Brave New World from Vintage, which are, they're just stunning. They're bright red on the inside, have really cool kind of flaps and different images on front, and I was really excited to get this because I've not read it, and I read Brave New World a few months ago now, and this kind of followed Brave New World, so I wanted to read that first, and I haven't got to 1984 yet, so just one of those classics that I feel like I need to read and I'm interested in reading, so I will. There's not much to say about that really. Next, a book I'm really excited about reading, and luckily I know I'll definitely read at least in the months of November and December, and that is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. And I know that I'm going to read this because this is the pick for these 2 months for the Feminist Orchestra Book Club, which is a book club run by me and Jean at Bookish Thoughts. And we were just saying the other day about how we really hope that this book lives up to the hype, because we've heard so many good things about it, and we really wanted to end the year on a high, basically, which is why we've saved this book for November and December. It's about a black woman who's living in, I guess, modern day US, I'm not sure whereabouts, but she finds herself going back in time at various points, I believe, to either her family's ancestors or her husband's ancestors, to 19th century Maryland, where obviously in the time of slavery, and she's having to kind of deal with the aspects of the past. So it sounds really interesting, kind of mix of historical fiction, and that paranormal aspect as well. And I've just heard so many amazing things about her writing, and I'm really excited. I hope it lives up to it. Then I've snuck a couple of extra ones into this TBR list just because I want to read them and just because I'm excited to. The first one of these is Melmoth by Sarah Perry, which I bought the other day. This came out on Thursday, what would it have been, the 3rd of October, I think. And I actually don't know anything about this book at all. Sarah Perry wrote The Essex Serpent. That was her debut novel, which I absolutely loved when I read it. So I was really excited to get her second one. And again, I've just heard a lot of praise for this book without actually really being aware of the plot or anything that it's about. I just was so keen to read it, and I thought this was historical fiction, but I think it's more based on somebody who is studying Melmoth, who apparently is some real historical figure. I mean, literally, I don't know why I'm explaining this book to you because I don't know anything about it, but I just was really happy to get it and I want to read it straight away. And finally, a book which I just think is so funny and I'm so pleased that I bought it. I'm really excited to read it. That is Dreamer's Pool by Juliet Marillier. Now, anybody who is a fan of Jean's bookish thoughts may have heard her talking about Juliet Marillier a lot in the last year, because she kind of discovered her in one of these really tacky, silly mass market paperbacks. And she read, what was it, Daughter of the Forest, I think it was called. And she told me she was reading it, and I was like, I read that book like years ago when I was kind of like really into this when I was a teenager, and I read that book and we were kind of bonding over it. And she said she loved it, and she's read like 6 of her books now. And we were in Forbidden Planet, and they had 2 copies of this book, which is a different series to the one that Jean has read. And so we both bought it and then thought, let's read it together and see how we get on, because I have not read any high fantasy like this for a very, very long time. And to be honest, I just picked this up because they didn't have very many Juliet Marillier's on the shelf. It was this one and the second one in this series, I think, which was available, so I just picked up the first one in its series. I guess I would call it guilty pleasure, but you shouldn't really think that about any kind of book, but I just fancy something really different to the kind of literary fiction that I guess I normally read. I've been reading a lot of non-fiction recently as well, and I just fancy something that's pure escapism that I can really just get into, and I think it will be extra fun if Jean and I are reading it together at the same time. So that's 10 books. I always feel kind of comfortable if I've got a list about 10 for across 3 months. I think that's fine, I think that's doable. She says, having not actually done it the last kind of 2 or 3 times, but I feel like there's room for manoeuvre and flexibility in there, and also I think I'll be able to get all of them read. I would love to hear from you if you've read any of these already. I'd really like to hear any recommendations you have, any that you're excited about reading now that I've shown them to you. If you're planning on reading any of these books in the next couple of months as well, I'd love to hear from you. We can chat about it, see how we're getting along with it, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!